Entrepreneurship can social inclusion. Okay. Welcome everyone to our 6th European Bauhaus webinar on crafting social, how creativity and entrepreneurship can foster social inclusion. We want to show that crafts are a tool to foster social inclusion by showcasing different examples today. In 2021, the European Crafts Alliance became an official partner of the new European Bauhaus. This initiative connects the European Green Deal to our living spaces. It calls on all Europeans to imagine and build together a sustainable and inclusive future that is beautiful for our eyes, minds, and souls. As part of this, ECA, the ECA, or the European Crafts Alliance, has developed a series of 6 online webinars with key experts that relate to the ambition of the new European Bauhaus. The aim of those webinars is to contribute to enhancing the capacities of the craft sector to contribute to building more resilient and sustainable societies and encourage the necessary adaptation of practices in the sector. You can watch all the previous ones on our YouTube channel. We will share the link in the chat later. So today we're going to speak about social inclusion. Craft is a tool that can lead to social inclusion by fostering creativity and community participation, resulting in integration and equity. Through crafts, opportunities are created for vulnerable and marginalized groups to develop skills, access sustainable livelihoods, and connect with society. Social inclusion can mean many things, as for instance, to promote cultural diversity. Craftsmanship serves as a means to preserve and value cultural traditions, particularly those of indigenous communities, ethnic minorities, and rural groups. Supporting artisanal work fosters recognition and respect for diverse cultural identities. It also can bring economic empowerment. Social inclusion programs in crafts often focus on training individuals to establish sustainable businesses, in particular for women, youth, and people with disabilities who often face barriers to entering the formal workforce. It can also mean the integration of people with disabilities. And also it promotes the collaborative work in spaces that foster social interaction, mutual learning, and support networks, as crafts cooperatives, for example. And crafts can be also an occupational therapy. So today we have invited 5 speakers that will share with us 4 very different cases. Our keynote speech is going to be on hold because she has some technical issues. So we are going to move forward on the program, and we will be starting with Sara Ribeiro. She's the director of Pomelaj. And Sara is, Pomelaj is a rural development cooperative, a social enterprise dedicated to rural development and the preservation of traditional crafts in Slovenia. Sara is passionate about social inclusion, sustainable practices, and circular economy models. She will present today how they create new opportunities for vulnerable groups, including people with disabilities and older workers, by respecting local traditions and skills. So, please, Sara, the floor is yours. You are going to share your screen, and we are going to unmute ourselves.
Well, thank you very much. Let me start with the screen first, please. Please, Laura, just let me know if it's working properly.
Yes, it's perfect.
Thank you very much. Just a moment. I would like to thank the European Crafts Alliance for the opportunity to share our story, Pomelaj's story. This is the story of craft, of social inclusion, of sustainable development. And we are really, truly honored to be here today. A special thank you to you, Laura, Miguel, Baumann, and the entire team for the invitation and thoughtful coordination. And I would also like to warmly greet everyone today joining us. It's a pleasure to speak alongside such inspiring contributors, each working toward a more inclusive and creative future. So I will share today a story of Pomelaj. I would like to briefly introduce it. We were found in 2003, this is 22 years ago, in a small rural village in Prekmurje. This is a northeastern part of Slovenia. It's a region known for its flat landscapes, rich agricultural traditions, very strong and specific dialect, and also very strong craft and culinary heritage. It's bordered by Austria, Hungary, and Croatia. From the beginning, it was the guiding idea was very simple. It stay close to the roots, root in local tradition, and develop it with care and creativity. In 2009, we became officially recognized as WISE, so a work integration social enterprise, providing employment for people with disabilities. As WISE, we are supported by the Slovenian Ministry of Labour, Family, Social Affairs and Equal Opportunities, who provides subsidies, employment subsidies, and supports services for employing persons with disabilities. Today, we employ 10 people. 8 of them are persons with disabilities, all local, most coming from surrounding villages. We are also proud to say that we are an all-women team. 2 of our co-workers work in the kitchen, preserving and innovating with local culinary traditions. The other 6 are skilled weavers, working with corn husk and willow osier, crafts deeply rooted in our region's heritage. These are also materials that were traditionally used in our part as very practical, for a practical use in the past. So what we do, we focus on traditional weaving, as mentioned, corn husk and willow osier. Both are grown in the vicinity of 500 meters from Pomelaj. We grow and collect these raw materials ourselves. The corn we use is an old local variety with very long corn cobs, precious to us, but they are not lucrative in conventional agriculture. That's why it's also very difficult to grow them. We harvest it by hand, peel it by hand, dry it in the sun, and store it in the attic. Everything is done by our team with the help of some members of our local community. In weaving, we use traditional weaving techniques that have been passed down from generations and which are now recognized by Slovenian Ministry of Culture as part of Slovenian intangible cultural heritage. This knowledge was acquired from local women who learned these skills from their mothers and grandmothers. We carefully pass them on from our most experienced weavers to younger colleagues and to all participants of our workshop, courses, summer camps, and any variety of demonstrations, children and adults of all ages. Weaving is hard, careful work, but it results in long-lasting, sustainable and beautiful items like hand-woven bags, handbags, baskets, slippers, decorations, fashion accessories. Pomelaj not only preserves traditional crafts, but also brings weaving into dialogue with contemporary design. To add value and relevance for contemporary users and markets, we actively collaborate with modern designers, architects, creative individuals from various fields. And also, Pomelaj has always collaborated closely with local artisans and handcrafters. And thanks to this long-standing engagement with the craft community, we were legally recognized as a craft center. Based on the first Handicraft Preservation and Development Act adopted in Slovenia in 2023, so 2 years ago, Pomelaj was officially recognized together with 7 other organizations as one of the 8 certified handcraft centers by the Slovenian Ministry for Economy, called Tourism and Sports. Today, we continue this collaboration, but with an expanded role. As a craft center, we actively support the development of crafts across all sectors in our wider local and regional environment. The center of Pomelaj are its people. Inclusion is not a project, it is our purpose. And we are committed to creating meaningful and long-term employment for people with disabilities and all those who are often overlooked in the traditional labor market. Our team includes persons with physical, intellectual, and psychosocial disabilities. Many of them have only elementary education. Some became mothers before reaching adulthood. Some have lived in abusive households in their families of origin or the families they formed later. They have faced long-term unemployment, poverty, and social exclusion. For some, Pomelaj is their first working experience, and for others, it is a supporting environment where they can really contribute and they also feel it. They are recognized. And at Pomelaj, work means much more than just an income. Of course, they lived many years without means to support themselves or their families, but besides this financial aspect or financial independence, work brings structure to their lives, social connection, and purpose. We provide a safe and adapted work environment with supportive supervision. So daily tasks include traditional weaving with corn husk, as mentioned, preparing goods for markets and exhibitions, mentoring workshop participants, and assisting with seasonal field work. It's usually only in September that we go in the fields. We focus on what each person can do and not what they cannot. So work is tailored to each individual's abilities. We always communicate and we listen to each other. So I listen and I hear the needs of our employees. And when someone expresses the wish to learn more, we do our best to support this growth. And let me share you a personal story that moves me. One of our weavers joined Pomelaj after living through an abusive family situation. And she was raising children with an unstable partner, lost her job with the previous company when it shut down, later worked abroad as a seasonal laborer in the fields, really having lifting a job. She was overworked and exploited completely. So her health deteriorated and she was diagnosed with a serious illness along with a psychosocial disability. And with time, patience, support, she began to heal and to weave. And I can tell you, she is gradually mastering the craft, gaining confidence. She is always asking for more difficult weaving techniques and now helps lead workshops for visitors. Recently, I invited her to an international event abroad where she welcomed guests in the language that she has learned while she was working abroad. And she shared the story of our weaving tradition. And she even led a live demonstration, something she once believed she could never do in front of a bigger audience. And today, whenever we travel abroad, our host international guest, she is the one who steps forward and with warmth and pride, and she is really shining. And one more additional story that I can share here is just a few months ago, she joined me at a television studio in the capital to present our work. And she sat in front of all those cameras and wove a bag live, calm, smiling, and in her element. And this is the power of craft and care. At Pomelaj, we act as a bridge between local producers, artisans, consumers, and visitors. Organized as a cooperative, we help local producers promote and sell their products through our network and retail spaces. In this way, we help build a stronger, more connected rural economy, one where tradition, sustainability, and social inclusion are joined in mutual marketing and cooperative efforts that benefit the regional economy. And I can also say that we are deeply committed to growing in a sustainable and socially responsible way even further. One of our next goals is to find solutions for the zero waste use of leftover corn husks created after weaving. So further closing the loop in our craft production. We are currently at the beginning of a project aimed at developing eco-friendly packaging and new sustainable products from these residual materials. To support our overall development strategy, we are actively writing and applying for national and international projects and funding opportunities so that we can help us grow and innovate. And we also hope to continue strengthening our role in the regional and international craft community, connecting with other artisans, designers, institutions, and like-minded initiatives. We warmly welcome collaborations, partnerships, and knowledge exchange. Let's work together to explore how craft can transform communities, empower people, and how we can integrate traditional crafts into modern social inclusion strategies, helping to shape more resilient, inclusive, and creative futures. Thank you once again to European Crafts Alliance for this opportunity and to all of you for listening. And I look forward to continuing this exchange during the Q&A questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sara. It has been really, really inspiring. There are some questions for you already, but let's keep them to the end. Maybe meanwhile you can share your website on the chat for people to visit and explore more what you have explained, because this is, I guess, something that people will be curious about.
Thank you.
So let's go next with Sara and Peter. Sara Batten and Peter Nutley are co-directors of The Exchange. They set up and run this space. The Exchange is a community-owned arts and crafts organization that uses the heritage of Eric's old library as a space designed and built by local people for the benefit of local people, so to inspire new programs and activities. This includes projects and activities that invite community participation, including the craft production workshops and community-driven events program. So, Sara and Peter, the floor is yours. You can share the screen if you want, and we are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Great. So thank you very much for the introduction, and we're really happy to be here as well. So yeah, to introduce ourselves, I'm Sara and this is Peter, and we're founding co-directors of the Exchange, and we're based in Erith, which is in southeast London. So it's as far out of London as you can get. We sit on the banks of the River Thames, but we're actually in historic Kent, so Kent is still in our postcode. It's a sort of post-industrial area. It was once a very thriving area. It was a popular riverside resort in the 19th century and a retail centre as well. It was known as the shopping centre of Kent. It was also a self-governing district, so it's now a town, but back then, when the time when we're talking about, it was actually a borough, which spreads over what is now the north of Bexley Borough in Greater London. It was a proudly, and it still is, a very independent place, so it doesn't fit very well in Bexley Borough. It ran its own transport systems, it had its own healthcare, it ran its own power, and it also commissioned its own library, which is now our home. And it was it was funded by Andrew Carnegie, who funded libraries across the world. And it was designed and built by local people, so local architect, but also using local materials. So the bricks were all made just down the road, and those oval windows that you can see in the picture there, they are early example Crittall windows, which were made in the first Crittall factory just down the road in Sidcup. But gradually Erith sort of lost a sense of itself. After the war, it struggled to sort of adapt to new economies. And as I said before, it became part of this restructure of London. Erith became no longer a borough, but a town within Bexley. There were lots of developments in the town centre that didn't do the town any good. We lost our historic high street, many of our historic buildings, and gradually people moved away from the town, both physically and psychologically. And that's kind of what we were dealing with when we sort of started the Exchange as a project.
Yeah, so that kind of that change that happened and a bit of the disintegration of the town, in a sense, extended to this building as well, the old library. So it started to fall into disrepair, and in, I think, the 1980s, they replaced the roof with the non-natural slate roof, and that failed, and the water started getting in. And it got in such a bad condition that eventually the council closed the library in 2009. After that, the library was kind of shuttered up and slightly abandoned for a period of time. And that's when Sarah and I got involved. We'd moved to Erith a few years before, and we saw the building, and we contacted the council and began discussions about what we might do with the building. At that time, we couldn't really get into the building a great deal. So we spent a couple of years doing pop-ups around the town and consultation events with people and exhibitions and things like that to find out what people wanted to happen in this building and what they wanted to happen to this building. So that's when we came up with the idea of the Exchange. And the Exchange is built around, I think, 3 core kind of principles.
And these principles are very much embedded in that heritage. So people really didn't want to see the history of this space and the history of this town lost. But there was also a tendency really to sit in the past. And what we wanted to do was use that heritage and sort of push it forward. So the 3 sort of guiding principles of what we do are these things here. So change starts here. So this is all about empowerment. So the library was a space for learning. And what we want to do is use the space to empower people to make the change that they want to see happen locally. The second pillar is around community. So obviously the library was a community space where people came together for all sorts of different things. And what we want to do is create the kind of environment where we encourage interaction between communities. Erith is becoming a much more diverse place. Lots of different cultures now represented in this area. So we want to bring those in and encourage conversation and understanding between groups. And then the last pillar, which is kind of very important to us, is the craft. So the building was designed and built by local people and the materials were local. So we want to really celebrate the power of craft at transforming high streets and places, but also in bringing people together. So that's the exchange in a nutshell.
Yeah, so one of the main things around that is the workshops. And what we're trying to do in the workshops is develop a new kind of model for craft, I guess. And it's something that's ongoing and we're still learning a lot. But I think the aim is that with a lot of craft, access to craft skills, to craft equipment and quality materials is difficult, and it can be expensive. And one of the aims of the exchange is to remove those financial barriers. We believe that getting people involved in craft and people learning craft skills kind of puts them closer to the things that they use, and it's something that's become increasingly hard to do. So the aim for the workshops is that we have a timber workshop, a textiles workshop, and a ceramics workshop, and we're hoping to have a print workshop soon. But the aim is that those workshops have very good equipment. We use very good sustainably sourced materials, and we have people working in those spaces who are trained and skilled craftspeople and artists and makers. And the aim is that people in the community can come and use those spaces, but use them free of charge, so that people come and learn furniture making, they learn textile skills and they learn ceramic skills, but they don't pay for it. Obviously, that's a bit of a dream. So, because it can't be free, someone has to pay for it. So the idea is that what they make in those spaces are for community use within the building or beyond the building in the town, or they're also made for sale. So we sell them, and the money that's made from the sales goes back into the project. So the people that come to get involved here not only learn really valuable craft skills, they get to be part of a community and to share those skills, but they also help us to maintain the building and to deliver the program that we do at the exchange.
And I think for the community use stuff, we're very, we've got some amazing funders, so including the Heritage Fund, Community Fund, so National Lottery, and we're also an Arts Council National Portfolio Organisation for this workshop model. So we have a kind of empowerment process, and the aim is that people or stakeholders, or sometimes they're both the same thing, people are involved in every step of the journey. So from ideas through to developing the brief, the design and production, the use, obviously, but also involved in the sale in some way. We always try to celebrate what people have done, their contributions. And we're also looking at ways that we can sustain the things that we make as well, which we'll talk a bit more about in a second. But we're going to go through just a few of the products that we've made with our local people.
Yeah, so in ceramics, one of the things we did was we commissioned an amazing ceramicist called Natalia, and she came and worked with the ceramics team. She gave lectures, she gave demonstrations, but the main bit of their project was they went down to the River Thames, which is really close to us, and when the tide is out, there's a lot of mud. So they came back with barrel loads of mud from the Thames, and they worked together cleaning it, drying it, sieving it, rehydrating it, and then they did hundreds of tests to see how that mud behaved when it was fired and when it was mixed with different materials and fired at different temperatures. That sort of testing process resulted in the development of a brand new glaze, which we call Erif Gold. And we've now made the first batch of tiles. You'll see in the top left there, that's the prototypes installed in the building. We're going to be making more and installing them in the building. And we're also, they're available for commission and sale. And they are going to be shown. Natalia has been asked to exhibit the project at London Craft Week in May. So if anyone's around, there's a chance to go and see them as well. The tables that we make, the idea is to make all our furniture here in the timber workshop. The tables that we made is probably the first time we really tested the model for craft. And if you look at the room that you see here, you'll see the room in 3 different stages. And that is the old newspaper room. And you'll see in the black and white picture, that's how it was back in the day. And people used to stand around reading the broadsheet newspapers on the angled panel desks on the wall. When we got into the building, that paneling had long gone and the walls had been plastered. But the damp was so bad, we had to strip the plaster from the walls. You can see in the bottom left there, the exposed brick. And that was so that we could dry the building out. Obviously, it's a listed building, so the initial response to the council was that you put the plaster back, but we managed to convince them to take a different approach. And because we needed tables for our events and our workshops, and we also didn't really have much storage, we came up with the idea that we'd like to have a folding table that would hang on the walls as paneling. And we prototyped a few things that were disasters, essentially. It didn't really work. So we approached an amazing design team called Mensen, Yasu and Risa, who are Japanese furniture designers, and they worked with us on the design. And then they came to our timber workshop and worked with myself and I think 7 or 8 volunteers over a 1-week period. They taught us how to make the tables, and we made 4, and then they went away, and myself and the volunteers then carried on making the rest of the tables, and we taught other volunteers how to make the tables, and they taught other volunteers how to make the tables. And we've now made 17 that fills the space in the walls, and then we went and made another 10 just because we kind of need them and we love them. And they're a beautiful design. Mensen designed a stunning folding table, solid oak, and it was nominated. It was longlisted for a Design Award, and it actually won the Wood Award in 2023, the furniture category. They've also designed complementary stacking chairs. Again, great kind of space-saving design and a beautiful item of furniture. This again, it's all made by our workshop volunteers, and this one incorporates a bit more advanced joinery, so the kind of skill levels really increasing in there as well. We also have a textiles workshop. Textiles workshops probably our most popular workshops, always busy. It's interesting that textiles, when we made the furniture, I would say 80% of the people involved had little or no woodwork experience at all. But in textiles, lots of people have experience and skills that they've developed over the years. So this is very much a workshop where people share those skills. So people in the community come, they lead skill up sessions, and they share their abilities. But we also bring in other artists and makers and craftspeople into that space to deliver particular projects. One we're very proud of was Sara Kelly came in for a commission she designed hand-woven window blinds, which are all woven from reclaimed linen on handmade tabletop looms. So the looms were made in the timber workshop again, but using leftover material from the refurbishment of the building. But Sara taught the volunteers to weave. Obviously, they take months to make, but they're stunning, beautiful things, and that's an ongoing project.
So this one's an example of how we combine the sort of other side of our programme, which is our community-led events programme, with the craft workshops. So we support people with ideas for events, social enterprise businesses, sort of larger projects. So Pauline, who's pictured up there in the Ghana t-shirt, she was one of our volunteers. She's of Ghanaian descent. And she wanted to celebrate her heritage and find out more about it. So we supported a 10-month programme of events which included music and food, We had the V&A down here to talk about their gold collection, but we also did combined it with a print project, which was led by a local volunteer, Colin, who is a print artist. And these are some of the prints that were inspired by Kento fabrics. And these are around the building now and also available for sale.
One thing we're really proud of here is the garden outside. So as far as we know, historically, there wasn't really much of a garden when it was a library, but it's quite a big space and we wanted to make something really special out there. So we managed to convince an amazing garden designer called Sara to work with us on the design. Sarah's one of the best designers of her generation, I think, and she's won several Chelsea Gold medals. She worked on the wildflower garden at the Olympics, and she's done some amazing gardens. She's really interested in how we increase access to those sort of designer gardens. Lots of the gardens in this country are private or gardens that you pay to visit. So the idea of this was that it would be free and available all the time, but also that people would come and get actively involved in it. So the volunteers were responsible for clearing the entire site, essentially. Then landscapers came in to do the kind of big heavy work. And then Sara designed a beautiful garden and we planted it mostly in 2 days. There was about 3,500 plants went in. We had about 70 volunteers working with us that day, but they were all working with Sara and Rachel from Sara Price Landscapes, and they kind of led the planting. So it's quite an experience for us all to kind of work with them. And that garden, like, it's a stunning garden now. It's been featured in Gardens Illustrated. It's a real kind of showcase. And we have a brilliant head gardener, Selena, who works on that 3 days a week. And 1 day a week, she has volunteers who continue to come in and help maintain the garden and propagate new plants.
And that's it. But you can find us, there's our websites there. The top one is the main exchange one, and the second one is one that's about to launch. It is live, but we're still tweaking it. But this is where we'll be selling some of our kind of higher value products. But anyone's welcome to contact us as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this inspiring presentation as well. We can see that crafts can help to build communities, and this was an excellent example. There are many questions for you as well in the chat that we will have later a Q&A session. I hope that we can go through all of them. And now I'm very excited to present our next speaker, who is Deirdre Figueiredo, Director of Craftspace on behalf of Shelanu. Deirdre has worked as a curator and manager in the field of contemporary visual arts, crafts, and museums for 30 years. In a wider role, she has contributed to diversity and cultural policy development as well. And Deirdre is Director of Craftspace, a leading craft development organization and creative producer creating opportunities to see, make, and be curious about exceptional contemporary craft. Craftspace positions makers to take an active role in civic society. It connects creative practice with diverse communities of interest and plays through a range of activities and partnerships. Building cultural, social, and human capital is a key driver of her work. So, Deirdre, as you can share your screen and go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. It's going to share. Let me know when you can see something.
Yeah, we can see it. We just need to have it in full screen mode.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, now, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, everybody. You've already done a brilliant introduction there, so I won't repeat that. And I'll carry on with the next slide. So I'm talking today about Shelanu. And Shelanu means belonging to us in Hebrew. It's a craft collective of migrant and refugee women formed in about 2010 and it's incubated by us with their own creative jewellery studio in our offices. But the story actually began in 2004 when Craftspace initiated a collaboration with an organisation called the Community Integration Partnership, or CIP for short, which was supporting refugee and migrant and asylum seeker women coming to the city, coming to Birmingham. And we worked with them to link to an exhibition that we were curating at that time, which was exploring the notion of self through jewellery and photography. And so the meeting of Hearts and Hands project involved artists, Jivand Asfalk, a photographer, and also a filmmaker. And they worked together with women to explore ideas of self through jewellery and photography. And you see a long necklace there. So this activity was where people held hands, and inside they had a piece of clay. And as they held hands and gripped each other, the clay formed a bead. And each bead, each person then wrote a little message about their identity and themselves, a little secret message. And that was used to connect the beads. And the beads were then made into a long necklace. So it was kind of about storytelling and capturing those ideas of self. And there were other aspects to the project as well. But it was very successful. And so we continued to work with the CIP and do further projects. These projects began to explore ideas of products, introducing new skills, and they were always facilitated by professional artists, so making artwork and products. And the culmination of this was an exhibition at the Crafts Council's Contemporary Craft Fair Origin in London. And you see that the stools they were making and decorating, you see them exhibited there on the wall, as well as the other things that they were testing and trying. And it had a fantastic response, and people were telling us that they weren't for sale, but people wanted to buy them. And so it was very encouraging. The women were there to tell their stories and to meet people. And it gave encouragement that actually this was a very needed product in the marketplace. And the women were very excited about the potential to carry on. So it gave us hope that our idea was that we saw the potential for women to transition into and progress from being just recipients and participants and beneficiaries of arts activity to actually becoming creative producers in their own right. So creative producers who can contribute to the local economy in Birmingham. And the social enterprise model seemed to be the most appropriate for the circumstances in which many of the women weren't allowed to earn individually, but could gain a sense of worth through earning for the enterprise. So everything would go back into the collective pot, and that money would be used to support further women to come into the project and also just to keep the project going. And we looked around and realised, or we knew really that the statistics around diversity in crafts were very poor, and predominantly, it was very white and very middle class. And so in doing this project, we were aware that we would be attempting to diversify the sector in our own way, and the women would be doing something unique. So there were various projects that to start the process, and we secured funding for 3 years and appointed a part-time manager, began to recruit women into a pathway through a series of taster activities. So went around the city doing these sort of taster activities, using the cityscape and unique cultural institutions in the city to as the backdrop and as the place to hold workshops and encourage people to get involved and give them a taste of what they might be exploring. So one of them was a residency, Roots to Revolution, and this was part of the transition phase, where the pictures at the bottom, they were visiting the Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, and then the Museum and Art Gallery very kindly gave us space to exhibit the work that was produced in response. So for some people, they'd never been to the museum, even though it's free, and it's free to go into. It was a real resource they just weren't aware of. As new citizens to Birmingham, they just weren't aware of the resources that were there that they could freely use. And so introducing people to navigate the city in that way was very good for their sense of belonging and their sense of well-being. The second project involved women looking at ideas of trade and visiting the jewellery quarter, researching, walking tours of the unique jewellery quarter. So participants researched the industrial heritage of the city, took walking tours of the architecture and other topography. We have lots of canals here, ostensibly more than Venice, we're told. These inspired, all of this exploration inspired contemporary pieces. Each person made a fantastic contemporary piece. So these are not people trained in jewellery skills. They all had to be learnt from scratch. And in my view, these beautiful pieces that you see there actually produced to a really high standard by people who've never made jewellery in their lives before. In my view, they perform a role as new markers or signifiers denoting place, and they represent a form of new creative vernacular. And I get very excited about how you can create new vernacular, building on the heritage and histories of that place, but these new people to the place can make their own difference and make it their own. These individual pieces were exhibited at a craft fair down in Bovey Tracy craft fair in Devon, and again they were exhibited in order to test the marketplace and to receive feedback from visitors, and it was a very useful starting point. After that, on returning, the women who were involved formed Shelanu, which was their name, that through a process they came up with that name, and they did workshops to think about what the social enterprise was about, who it was for, what its mission was. So it's formed by a core group of women, and it evokes the spirit of a city of 1,000 trades and workshop of the world, as Birmingham was known during the Industrial Revolution. And it links to the still thriving jewellery quarter. So it was a good choice in terms of Shelanu fitting in with the local ecology. So Shelanu principally makes jewellery to sell. It's jewellery with a local heart, but encompassing global cultures. And we also set out to explore the value of collective making and creative authorship, which also would engender a social return, as well as unique co-created products infused with multiple diverse cultural perspectives, lived experiences, knowledge and skills. Shelanu's mission is to create a safe space for women to benefit from coming together and being with others, to develop craft skills, confidence, well-being, selling and exhibiting locally, nationally and internationally, working to commission and sharing skills through public, corporate and peer-to-peer workshops. Over the past 13 years, women have also had creative training with professional makers, business training, artists in schools training, safeguarding, branding and packaging training, and even media training. So we see them in this diagram as enacting a sort of cultural citizenship, which maybe some women don't have at their position of being a refugee. They're sort of in limbo, waiting and waiting and waiting, sometimes for years, for their paperwork to come through or to gain leave to remain. They become ambassadors and they feel pride where they could easily feel forgotten and isolated and lonely. And these small stories become bigger stories when you do them together. And they definitely is something sort of homegrown. It's a story of Birmingham, and they are rewriting the story of Birmingham. So their first collection was a batch produced and hand finished enamel collection called Migrating Birds. It's a visual symbol encapsulating a sense of joy and journey to Birmingham. As birds migrate, people migrate as well. So a simple idea, but it was very effective for their first collection. And any manufacturing required is always done locally in the jewellery quarter. So they do contribute to that craft ecology, and they are part of it. They also undertook their first bespoke retail commission for Regional Museum in Coventry, and created laser cut jewellery. Their brief was to be inspired by an exhibition that was on at the time on the theme of conflict, peace and resolution. And they linked up with a digital fabrication company in Birmingham's jewellery quarter, which was a new skill for the women. So they learned something, but also they were able to meet the brief and produce a fantastic collection for the shop. And the collection sold out in the duration of the exhibition. So that was really encouraging to know that they did a good job, and that people wanted to buy that work. Shelanu has also been there for key civic moments of the city, and Shelanu has exerted influence and been a unique and visible vehicle to promote diversity and cohesion. They've contributed to placemaking in an authentic and homegrown way. So this project, Story Meadow, was a large-scale installation in collaboration with artist Shivan Asfalk, and invited the public to define Birmingham through the contribution of migrants to the city. It was made during a one-week residency to celebrate the opening of our new Library of Birmingham. And for me, it signified a powerful connection with that democratic idea of the commons of thought for all people, free to enter and to learn whoever you are. So the building was very much in the spirit of how Shelanu operates. And so you can see there were people were invited to make these flowers and write their own migration story inside, and then it was folded up. And people made over 2,000 flowers, 40 plus languages over 5 days, and it was quite a stunning installation. Determined to have a further stake in placemaking, Shelanu and civic life, Shelanu designed a new souvenir range for Birmingham. Previously, there was nothing really, only like pencils and sort of mass-produced things. So unlike anonymous factory-produced items, these souvenirs, which are born out of a handmade process, embedded authenticity, integrity, and intentionality, these were produced and sourced locally, and they helped to bind the story of Shelanu to this place. And the souvenir range has been purchased by the City Council as civic gifts for visiting delegations. So it's important in having a civic dimension of what Shelanu does and what it means. Sorry. Interlocking Stories, Interlocking Stories there is the second collection where shapes interlock in silver and gold and symbolize how the women felt that they fitted together as a harmonious group. So it was quite clever. The negative and positive spaces were the whole collection designed to sort of fit together. And so each collection is very personal to the group, and they work on it together and everybody contributes. The latest collection, Nurture, utilises sustainable and circular methods of production using offcuts of wood and cross-cultural visual imagery relating to well-being and nature and that kind of thing. There are pieces that move, so the idea that's for your own well-being as a wearer, you can change and move the pieces and use them to fiddle with if you feel slightly anxious. All the collections are sold through craft fairs with members selling direct to the public, and this engagement is very affirming and helps to combat negative press portrayals of migrants. When you meet somebody standing there who's made those things and you can have that conversation, it breaks down barriers. The women regularly give creative workshops in the community, enabling diverse participants to express and represent themselves. Some members are paid and some volunteer. They share their skills as well as their interpretations of identity and belonging, promoting messages of cohesion. And through this process, they can model as well as become confident ambassadors of their city and empowered cultural citizens. The Women's Maker Movement was a 2-year programme of craft and enterprise activities facilitated by Shelanu members. They worked with over 90 women across 3 community organisations in the city. And over a series of workshops, women made their own jewellery collection, exploring identity and place. They were also introduced to basic business skills with inspiring talks from local enterprise startups. And it was largely South Asian Muslim women who felt free to explore personal imagery and designs. And what was interesting was that there were a lot of women who do cake decorating in their own community. And some of them were able to transfer their skills in sugarcraft to modelling in polymer clay. And they never thought that they might have those transferable skills and be able to make jewellery to sell. So it was a really interesting sort of dynamic there. The impact of Shelanu, this is from about 2 years ago. They delivered 112 workshops with over 15 community partners and collaborating organisations, reaching 1,317 women. So it's much more than that now, and 336 hours of specialist workshop. 90% of participants said that the creative activities helped develop social and communication skills and boosted self-esteem. And they've exhibited in at least 21 exhibitions, more than that now, with over 600 pieces sold to date, and very positive feedback from the women about, you know, their sense of well-being and what they get from being in Shelanu. So, in summary, Shelanu exemplifies an alternative pathway to creative practice, bringing to the market unique products that wouldn't otherwise exist. And in the process, it supports women's transition into an integrated life. And Shelanu is much more than making jewellery. It's making as a catalyst in a process of discovery and learning, enabling women to find friends, independence, community, and active citizenship. It shows how craft and making can unify. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sara. Another inspiring case, and we see the power of women together. This is amazing. So I must tell you that it was really difficult to choose among so many interesting cases that we have found working in social inclusion, and we have brought here 3 today with different insights that I hope was inspiring to our audience. And as you know, we had some technical issues at the beginning, and we started the other way around. So now we will have our keynote speaker. Instead of starting, she will be finishing, which is also very good. So today with us, we have Monika Auch. She is the author of Stitch Your Brain, sorry. This is an empirical study about the intelligence of our hands and the effect of creative making on health and well-being. Monika has been a maker, photographer, and writer since her early youth. She moved from Germany to Amsterdam to study and to practice medicine, simultaneously developing and continuing her intuitive practice of making. At a certain point, she switched professions and since then combines artistic research, making, and writing. Her work focuses on the importance of the intelligence of the hand and the senses in the Anthropocene. In 2024, the results of her 10-year study on the influence of digitalization on creativity, health, and well-being, Stitch Your Brain, was published by an international publisher. And today, she will be sharing those with us. So please, Monika.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope that everybody can hear me, and I'm asking Siobhan to show the slides, please.
So I've just started sharing now. Lara, can you confirm if you can see it?
Yes, everything is perfect. Thank you.
visible. Thank you very much. Yeah. So hello, and thank you very much for inviting me. And after these really impressive activities that you showed before, I feel rather humbled, because the only thing I can offer you is a sort of microscopic view on what crafting means to individuals and to our dexterity and how it empowers people. And I approach the whole idea of making by hand very much from my own position as a former scientist and as a maker myself. So I'm a visual artist. I'm based in Amsterdam, and previously I worked as a medical doctor in women's healthcare. I was always very pleased with the sensitivity and dexterity of my hands, and I hope my patients were that as well, because all the jobs I had to do, like stitching, inserting IUDs, and performing physical examinations, you really need to have sensitive hands. But during my medical training, which is really a lot of theories and theoretical reading, I missed working with my hands so much that I took up weaving as a hobby, and I got hooked. And I became quite addicted to constructing and exploring form and materials. Later on, while I was practicing medicine, I studied textile design at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy. And after graduating, excuse me, in 2000, I made the career switch to the visual arts. My work, however, is always very investigative. I love doing research in the arts as well. So to say it in another way, if there is no burning question for me as a driving force, I just won't move. So why? Can we move to the next slide, please? So, Siobhan, can we move to the next? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So I've always been very much interested in this connection that exists between our hands and the brain, because very often I experienced that my hands were actually moving much faster than my brain. And at the same time, now, can we move to the next one, please, Siobhan? This is just 2 slides. Move to the next one, please, to show you some of the work that I do as a weaver, which is really very fine work. Okay, we can move to the next one. You can look at those on my own website. But what was the reason that I put up this study about Stitch Your Brain, and how did I come to use that name? Well, what I observed as well is in the whole process of digitalization, which started somewhere in the 90s and is still going on, that all of a sudden swiping, scrolling and tapping on screens seems to have taken over many of the actions we otherwise do with our hands. And this caused me as well, because I noticed in my own children, who all of a sudden did not have handcrafts at school any longer, that if you did not watch it, they were really deprived of a lot of motorical skills to learn. Maybe Montessori schools will be different, but on the whole, in the Netherlands, the schools were really deprived of good schooling in the crafts. And I was wondering in the long run how this impoverishment would affect crafts, our knowledge and our sensitivity about materials, and even our well-being and our health. So I had questions like, how do we define creativity actually? Does age affect our creative output? And has our experience of creativity maybe changed during the COVID years when we had to live in isolation? And these and many more detailed questions are the basis of the project, which has been running since 2013. And on this slide, I went with these questions to the Amsterdam Neuroscientific Institute, and they were sort of laughing at me, but at the same time, I was allowed to do some experiments with me as a guinea pig, as you see on the slide. What happens actually in your brain when you are doing a repetitive movement like knitting, and then you change something. And when I was studying all the literature about creativity in the neurosciences, I was very happy to find that actually in Canada, some scientists had approached the same question in the same way. However, what happens when you knit and you change the technique of knitting and you measure that inside the brain, you just see that another part of the brain becomes active. So in order to answer all the questions I had, this was not the way to approach it. Can we move to the next slide, please? So I knew then that I had to change my tactics and my way of research. And I set up an empirical study, which means that you have to involve in a sort of open framework as many people of a wide variety as possible. So what I did is I conceived this model of a mid-slice brain as an embroidery package with a needle and yarns, and people could purchase it. They could work on it, they could stitch their brain in whatever way they liked. It did not have to be embroidery, and I asked them kindly to send me a photograph to include on the website. And if they wanted to take part in the study, I sent them a questionnaire with 20 detailed questions so I could gather data. Could we move to the next slide, please? So in the run of the 10 years and even now, I think about 600 of these embroidery kits have been distributed all over the world. And after 5 years, what happened, I have to say, is that people did not only send me photographs, but they sent me the actual works themselves. So I ended up with more than 100 of these fantastically embroidered and worked on brains. And in 2018, we had a big exhibition in Amsterdam, and they are all in my possession now. And this collection, the Amsterdam Brain Collection, I call it, actually is a traveling exhibition which can go to museums and be represented. The next one, please. In the run of the years, I had several international partners join me. Right from the beginning, I got quite a lot of interest from Great Britain, actually, where the movement of arts and health has been going for a long time. So I was invited as speaker to various conferences, and in Lancashire, we have the Gawthorpe Textile Collection that was founded by craftivist Rachel K. Shuttleworth. And this organization bought about 30 of the kits, and they distributed them in their own community. And they set up a beautiful exhibition and invited me as a speaker to the conference. And now I must say that until that moment, which was years later, I had never thought about the impact that I thought, such simple question like stitch your brain had on people. Because there in that beautiful exhibition, the participants to the study came up to me and they told me all their personal stories. And I realized that the impact it has on people to think about their brain is much more than just doing some sort of embroidery. I'll come back to that later. Next slide, please. Then later on, I was joined by a Danish organization, an artists organization, which actually was housed in a former psychiatric hospital, where until quite recently, if patients died, the brains were being removed and sent for research to another hospital. So the bodies then were buried in what the community knows as the brainless graveyard. So when that artists community heard about the project, they became all interested and said, you are bringing back the brains. So they formed a whole big community, and eventually there was an exhibition with about 70 brains. The project was featured in the national newspaper, and there are still groups in Denmark working on that project. Next slide, please. So I really should tell you something about the results of the 10-year study. Now, the thing is that, so a few hundred of these kids went out, but the problem always is with questionnaires is that you only get a few back. And I had to wait, and I had to wait until I had collected about 100 questionnaires in order to have enough data to answer some of my questions. So on this chart, you see that there are two groups actually that formed, because at some point quite a lot of artists joined, and the artists group are the ones in the deep blue color, and the non-artists participants are the one in the light blue color. The interesting thing is that the main group of people that joined were women in the, what we call in medical terms, the perimenopausal group. And this actually, so this is from, say, 45, 50 years old until 70 or whatever. And this typically is a group that has to deal with a lot of changes in their lives. Of course, there are the hormonal changes. At the same time, there might be changes in career. They have to take care of grandchildren or children. They have to take care of older relatives. So it is quite a stressful period in women's lives. And it was really interesting to see a lot of these problems reflected in the works. And I'll show you some examples later on. And as you see in that chart, there is a difference in years, and in the COVID years, a whole group of younger women joined, and that gave me some other insights about crafting and dexterity and skills. Next slide, please. One of the main things that interested me is if contact with material and crafting, working creatively, how people feel about it. Now, I'm not going to go into all the statistical details. You can read that in the book. But the main thing is, and one of the outcomes that we probably would have guessed anyway, is that most people felt happy and absorbed when they were really involved in stitching their own brain. And you see in the two columns on the right-hand side that artists actually got quite stressed. More of the artists got stressed in doing a creative task than the people who are not artists. And I think that probably has to do a lot with what they expect the works to do. Okay, next slide, please. What amazed me is that people sent me back their works, but as well, they told their stories. And I just want to tell you a few of the stories. This is Mary Rousseau. I asked everybody who is in the study if I could share their personal details, and I have written permission to do so. So this is an American woman who actually, together with receiving the embroidery kit, got the message that she was being made redundant, which was a great source of stress for her. But as she wrote to me in her statement, she said, just sitting down and getting involved in stitching my brain really helped me to focus on possible solutions, and it gave me calm. And I think if you look at the materials now as well, you can see that the way she portrays her brain with all the chaotic threads and the many colors sort of reflects on her way of being at that time. And I would like to connect that with the fact that if you are obsessed in a negative way or have depressed or stressful thoughts in your head, the thing is that once you get them out of your head and you can give them a material shape, you will feel much more relieved. And this is an experience that, of course, we use in psychiatry when we have people engage in creative activities, but it was very much reflected as well in the study. Next slide, please. What came up as well in a lot of the brains is that a lot of the women had to care for relatives or friends who had dementia. And this actually is work that, it's one work, and you see the front and the back of the work, but it is one piece, and it was done by 2 Dutch women who have to care for sick relatives. And if you look at the way that the healthy and the dementia brain are being depicted, I think it's quite amazing how in a very simple technical way, the materials speak about what it means to be confronted with these illnesses. The next one, please. This is, again, a confrontation with Parkinson's disease. And it is, again, it is one work, and you see the back and the front of the pieces. And I think this is really, in the way the colors are used, in the way the stitching is used, and the hole in the middle is a very confronting way as well to show Parkinson's. Next one, please. This is a more cheerful one, and with this and the next brain, I just want to say something about the influence of age. Both of these women are now in their 80s, and the interesting thing is that if you look at the brains, it does not give you any idea about what age the participants are. And I think this one, in all its colorfulness and the way it's being executed, is really impressive. Can we go to the next one? And what I really like about this one done by Roswitha Witten is the way that she uses the colors, and as well that she goes across the boundaries of the whole piece of glass. Next one, please. This is one of the 4 male participants. It's a Canadian colleague of mine. And actually, this is one of the brains that disappeared in the post, and it reappeared 3 months later magically. And it's beautifully done. And Joe as well says that it just gave him so much peace to be sitting there. And you see that he put an awful lot of effort and work into it. Next one, please. This is an example of somebody who really put her soul and her whole being. And Pauli, she stitched even 3 brains, and it's very meticulous work. It's very fine cross stitch and other techniques she used. And she is a very religious person. So in each of the brains, she has incorporated a saying from the Bible. And all of these sayings relate to the way that the Bible says that we are being created in the womb. Next one, please. Now, this is somebody from Norway who actually got fed up. She's one of the negative respondents, and she'd thrown it out because she got really annoyed with the colors and with the material and whatever. And it's only when I put out a call for lost brains that she responded, and she said, all right, I'm going to look it up. And of course, the funny thing, I think, is that although she was fed up with doing that work, I believe it's a very beautiful piece in the structures that are being depicted and the colors. Next one, please. What interested me, and we just go back to one of the charts, and there were various questions about how people reacted to when they were doing the stitching, when they made a mistake. Because the moment you make a mistake, you have to take a decision what to do. Incorporate a mistake, take it out, start it all over, throw out the whole thing, or just behave as if nothing happened. And this is the moment, I think, in any creative action that real creativity and real problem solving comes up. So this chart here shows you, as for the learning abilities and the long-term learning results are quite impressive, because the light blue ones are the negative responses, and you can see on the whole On the right-hand side, we have the group of artists. On the left-hand side are non-professional participants, but you see that the charts are nearly the same. And on the whole, the positive long-term learning results are much better than the frustrating results. Next one, please. This one is a young woman who took part in the COVID period. She is a mother of two, very busy, of course. She's the deacon on one of the art schools, and she just gave up. But she wrote this real interesting comment where she said, it really, really made me think about the way that I was living and that I had to slow down and I had to concentrate on something. But she just did not have the motoric skills. And you see that with a lot of younger women, that because they have not been taught any handcrafts, any really fine motoric skills at school, they are literally not able, without any further time to invest or with any further tuition, to do the work that, like you saw in the previous brains of women that are much older. Still, I really, really like this brain, because you can see, as for creativity, she really made an interesting attempt of composition, of a choice of colors. And I don't really look at the brains if there are really good crossword stitches or whatever. I look at different aspects, and I think this is a really, really interesting brain. Next one, please. So what do we want when we engage in a creative action? I think what we really want is to get into this flow, that you really concentrate on something, that you have the contact with the material, that you have to solve the problems. Which colors shall I do? Which shape shall I do? And you're really in the moment. And I asked people as well to fill in how many hours they needed to complete the project. And that was really impressive. Like the non-artists would say on the whole that they would use something like 21 hours. Artists usually put in 27 hours for each brain. And I think that is really a lot of commitment showing there. And you can see as well in the chart that the yellow shows that people were working on the project longer than 1 hour. And very few people were just working on it for, say, something like 15 minutes, which is a very short time period to get into one of these projects. So we can safely say that people were really engaged and committed to the project, and they must have experienced this really beautiful effect of being in the flow of creating. Next one, please. So I ended up, as data goes, I had all the data from the questionnaires. That was one source of information, but the other source of information were, of course, the brains themselves that I had being sent. But another thing is that nearly everybody gave a written comment about what they had done. And the interesting thing is that throughout the years, and you see that in these three charts, you see a difference in comments that people gave. Like in the beginning years, they would make comments about the techniques of the process they were doing, or they were saying something positive or negative about what it meant to them. They were saying something about the brain. But I want you to look at the light gray area, because the light gray area has increased and increased enormously in the COVID years. And the light gray area stands for all the comments that people made on the state of the world, on climate change, on global change, and all the worries that had amassed. And I think that's really interesting, that this period of being isolated really maybe brought people back as well to what matters most. Next one, please. And you see that comment on global change as well in the various brains that were made in that period. The one at the left-hand side is made by a Norwegian woman, and it shows all the plastic that she encounters on her sailing trips in Norway. The green one, the chaotic threads, is by a Swedish colleague, and she's very much concerned about the health situation in our seas, and she works a lot with seaweed. And the young woman down at the right-hand side, she's a young woman who had to stay at home in the COVID area, and she really got into bird watching, and she embroidered this beautiful piece with the birds in it. Next one, please. This is Zoe Zhou from Hong Kong, and she experienced that a lot of people were being arrested on the streets in Hong Kong, and their names were being put in the newspaper, and she used the newspaper and she cut it up and she rolled them up, and she used them to embellish her own brain, and she calls this piece A for Arrest. Now, what I can say, concluding about all the way that people approached the project, is that it is quite obvious that this simple question to stitch your brain motivated people to really reflect on the world and actually to put their own identity on these simple pieces of fabric. Next one, please. At one stage in the whole process, I realized that actually I didn't have very much of a clue about embroidery. So I engaged a technical art historian, that's Manet van Veldhuizen, whom you see in the front of this photograph here. And I asked her to look at all the different brains and to analyze them as for the use of materials and the processes and so forth. And she wrote a really interesting article in the book as well. Next one, please. So what is this all about? What I really wanted to do in this study is that I wanted to give figures, to give statistical evidence about how important it is for us as human beings to be creative, to be in contact with material, to be educated in working with our hands, because it really does contribute to our well-being and our health. And I just hope as well with the publication of the book that it will give everybody who is applying for funding arguments to get more money in order to underline this. For everybody seems to think that crafting and making by hand is good for you. But what I wanted to do in this 10-year study is to find the facts and to put statistics and a lot of arguments behind the importance of crafts and crafting. And here you see some examples of people working and crafting, and I want to draw your attention to the one at the right-hand side down there. And this is me repairing the toy of a child, because I'm a volunteer at the local repair cafe where people can come and they get their clothes or their mechanical devices fixed. And once a month as well, we have a special repair cafe for children, and they come in with their toys and we fix their toys. And I think this is just such a simple way to show children that you can still use a toy, that you can fix things, that once you are able to do that with your hands, that you can keep something that you really like and appreciate. And while you talk to the children and while I stuff their toys and we decide on which color eyes the toy will have, the mothers sit there and I try to engage them as well. And I try to get them interested in learning a craft and how to learn the hands again and to use their hands again. Okay, next slide, please. Of course, there are lots of embroidery projects at the moment. This is one in the Icelandic Textile Center where I stayed for a month last year. And visitors and the community have embroidered a 20-meter long piece which depicts the Icelandic history. And I think there's a lot of these embroidery projects that have popped up everywhere. And embroidery is just such an easy way. You don't need a lot of equipment, and you can teach people quite easily how to get good at it. Next one, please. In all this time, I had the invaluable critical feedback from a professor in art history and philosophy, Professor Robert Swijnenberg from Leiden. He wrote a really interesting article in the book as well about how we look at our brain. And his conclusion as well is that obviously you can look at the charts, you can look at the statistics, but if you look at the works themselves, you can see that art reaches beyond data, and art helps us understand even difficult facts, like in the what the neuroscientists try to explain through finding facts, but still are not able to do, because there's always the invisible and the ephemeral that only art can show. Next slide, and that's the last one. So I was very happy to get enough funding and a fabulous international publisher, Eleanor Yapsam, to get the book published, which shows you a lot of the brains, and as well 5 really good articles. It has a very tactile cover, because tactility really is important. You can find a lot of the facts as well on the special website that I set up. It has an impossible long name, cargocollective.com, Stitch Your Brain. That's because Stitch Your Brain obviously was such a sexy title that it was hacked nearly immediately. So I had to refer to the very long title, but you will find all of the brains there and the whole history of the project as well. So I thank you very much for attention, and I hope, despite the technical difficulties, that you found it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monika, for sharing your study with us. Many questions were asked about if you could share it, but you did it at the end. So this question is already answered. You can find the book in libraries. I will ask all the other speakers if they can still join us for 10 more minutes, as there are many questions, and I will kindly ask you to be brief because there are many questions. Also, a lot of comments saying thank you, how interesting, insightful, and inspiring this has been. So I'm going to start with Sara, our first speaker. Let me just get the questions. There was a question from Ace. She was saying, I wonder, while you were running the project in Pomelaj, what kind of troubles, difficulties you faced?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, as WISE, as work integration social enterprise, there is always first the money question. This is, you know, to be financially sustainable and have people employed, that means 10 salaries per month, to guarantee that especially our workers with disabilities and their families get their salaries and everything what is necessary in the whole package. Yeah, this is very, very difficult. So in Slovenia, we are very fortunate to have this support by the Ministry of Labor, and we are receiving funding on monthly basis. Of course, it's not 100% funded, which means that the rest, usually between 30% of the salaries, we have to fund by ourselves. So We do this through selling our products, through touristic activities on our premises. So yeah, this is always a balance, you know, and you always need to be very inventive. That's why I'm also trying to gain as much subsidies through projects and all kind of collaborations as possible. So the long-term financial stability is always the biggest issue. The second one, I would say, is also the, you know, about the pool of the people, of the local people that have that are come from vulnerable groups, is always, you know, sometimes people choose not to reintegrate back to labor market after they face serious illness. So it's very difficult sometimes to obtain people to come to us, and for us this is vital. You know, people who are employed with us are vital because they are carriers of heritage, they are carriers of knowledge, and so within our organization, we are taking care that each employee learns as much as possible of the techniques, and so that, you know, we will not stay without them. So that this is, of course, the third problem with crafts. The heritage is disappearing. The traditional skills are disappearing. Young people are not interested in taking traditional crafts. In Slovenia now there are movements on formal level to start this again. So this is more or less, you know, I could go on with other, you know, like my market accessing, visibility, partnerships in projects. Then, of course, innovation and tradition again together, you know, how much you can go into innovative things to still keep the tradition. So, yeah, I mean, we need all the support that we can get. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all the support we get.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sara. The next question is to Peter and Sara as well, and it's related to finances. Tina, Amanda, and Emma have asked some questions about this. What is the proportion of the budget needed for your operation in a year? What is the revenue from sales and made things, grants funding, including from heritage? And if you can mention the name of the landscape architect again. And then Amanda is also interested to hear more about the original investment and the business model. And Emma, how did you go about funding the building purchase itself? Was it council or funded, or did you have to put in a lot of private money? So you see all questions related on funding and how on the business model. If maybe you can just explain briefly.
Yeah. So the easy one is who was the landscape architect, and that's Sara Price Landscapes. So she's brilliant. We'll put that in the chat.
Well, LinkedIn, yeah.
In terms of the original investment, so we had investment from the local authority and the Greater London Authority for the first phase of building works. We then went to the Heritage Lottery Fund for the second phase of building works. We obviously had to fundraise match on top of that, which included like lots of different funders, but also a community shares campaign. So we raised 175,000 through community shares. So local residents actually own the exchange. Anything else on that side of things?
That was the building project and sort of getting the exchange established, yeah.
And then ongoing, so we run a building, so very similar. There's lots of things going on to make it kind of financially viable, but we're very heavily reliant on grant funding. So about 80% of our money comes from grant funding. So that's Arts Council, Heritage Fund, Community Fund, trusts and foundations, local sponsorship with businesses. And then we opened a year before the pandemic hit. So we sort of started our sort of income streams, and then everything kind of collapsed, and then we've been struggling through the cost of living crisis, and we're not expecting anything to get much better for quite a while. So we have different income streams. So yes, from our sales, but we also do venue hire. We've got a shop on site. We're just launching our shop online, which we sent a link in. We do sell tickets to some paid for courses and events. And I think I've missed something. And we're also, similar to Sara, we're trying to build a kind of visitor experience as well. So we've got a beautiful garden. So with a coffee bar, so getting people to buy coffees and things. But it's a lot of work when we want to be doing all the good stuff that we do. It's hard. And funders are just, everybody's struggling as much as they want to give the money. We got less than half that we were recommended from the Arts Council. So it's tough.
Yeah, but I think also the thing, we don't make a huge amount through sales of the products yet, but a lot of the products, it takes quite a lot of investment, I suppose, because there's a whole design process of prototyping, learning how to make it, you know, so the furniture, for instance, like getting that just perfect and ready for sale is quite a lot of investment in the first instance, but now it's ready and the website's kind of ready to go. So we hope that will.
And we needed like something to launch as well. Having one table and one chair isn't really enough to go out to the market. But now we've got prints and textiles and all sorts of things. So we've got a kind of a gallery of things. So yeah.
So hopefully that balance will change.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you so much, Sara and Peter. And maybe I invite all our audience to check the websites, and maybe you can buy some gifts for Christmas from there and support our guest speakers and their organizations. That would be nice. Well, funding is a recurrent topic, and the question for Deirdre is similar. Pilar is asking, how have you managed to make the project sustainable over time? Yeah, I'm muted, sorry, cannot hear you.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody that's on the screen as well, the speakers. I think in truth, we also are reliant on grant funding for Shelanu. I mean, it makes its own sales. The sales that it makes pays for the studio rent and the heat and light, but it's only just. And in reality, Craftspace is using its resources as an Arts Council funded client to underpin Shelanu's existence, and also the nature of that. We had ambitions for it to become self-sustaining, but then realized that the nature of the participants, the nature of the women and the membership being largely refugee and migrant women, they're just very vulnerable people, and often sometimes they have to move really quickly, and they love the project but they can't stay, and so their lives are very disrupted, and people have health and well-being issues, and so trying to sustain it in that way. There are some regular long-term members, but it's always quite transitory, and because of the nature of it, it is. So trying to get that skill base built up permanently is always a challenge, and therefore the income, to support that, your income streams can be variable because people come and go. So it is a challenge. It's not easy.
Thanks. Thank you. I have just a comment. We have seen that it brings so much back to society and to the community. I don't know why they don't find or we don't have secure funding for all these amazing projects. I mean, this is something to think about because it's supporting lots of communities and giving so much back that I think it should be supported more. I have another question for Monika. Someone is asking if you are still sending brains for workshops and exhibitions, and Catherine wants also to know if you can say something about the social and economical profile from those people that send their brain.
All right. As for workshops, I think communities who do their own workshops, like the study has been finished now, and it's not my main work. My main work is something completely different. In weaving, and as well, I'm editor of a magazine. But the study itself, I never made a profit, but I was able, through the sale of the product, which in the beginning I printed myself with silkscreen, I was able to finance it, and I had some few grants, so that was that. The exhibition, well, the 100 or more brains are in my possession, so they are ready to go wherever there would be a really interesting exhibition and a good venue to show them. And I'm quite sure that it will spark, like it does all the time, new initiatives, and that people will engage in doing their brains. I mean, there's much more to it, but I can't really go into all of this. The people who took part in the study, they were mainly white women of, as I said before, of an older age group until COVID hit us. But you have to keep in mind that I had only something like 120 participants, which is just about the minimum you need to say something about cognitive learning or whatever. So obviously most of them were not from a migrant group or other of another group that had a lower social economic status, I think, except for, I think, the group in England, maybe in Lancashire. I had the idea that the community there, the kits were given out to the community, because obviously this is a region in Great Britain which does not have so much money. And I don't know about the groups in Denmark as well, but there the kits were being given out to schools as well. So that's as far as my information goes.
Thank you, Monika. I guess that some people want to teach their brains, so that's why they were asking. So you inspired our audience.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we will need to finish. I know there are still lots of questions of people who would like to know more about your projects, but I really invite our audience to check their websites, and we will publish this webinar again in our YouTube as soon as we have downloaded. And I really wish to thank you all for your contribution to society in general, but also today for participating here and sharing that with us. We will have a short survey at the end of this webinar to hear more about our audience, how they found the webinar, how are we doing this kind of things and activities. And you can, of course, engage with all of us through our social media. I think we really need to stay connected and share this kind of projects. Someone was asking you, Sara, for instance, if you can share your email address because they wanted to connect. Others were asking also Sara and Peter. So it's really interesting. So yes, please stay in touch. And thank you very much, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.